This is One Soccer Today for this Monday, September the 26th. My name is Adam Jenkins. That's our pal Gareth Wheeler. And joining us as well today, the second most famous COC in Canada after only the Canadian Olympic Committee and long-suffering Aston Villa supporter who still manages to put a smile on his face. Mr. Charlie O'Connor Clark joins the program. Gentlemen, good to see you both. Gareth, we got to get right into it. Two big topics today, the Canadian men's national team and the CPL playoff race. We'll begin with the former, and this is a two-part question, so stay with me here.
Oh, God.
Number one, where is the Gareth Wheeler hype meter on match day -1 prior to Uruguay, and what questions still need to be answered from you from this camp to determine whether or not this is a successful camp or not?
Okay, so the hype meter. Do you want to do this out of 10? Might as well.
Yes. Yes.
Seems like a decent number to work off of. How about 8? I'm a solid 8, bordering
Okay.
on 8.5 here. That's just because Uruguay, who's like a top competitor, and I think it's a country with legitimate aspirations and chances to go deep at this upcoming World Cup. They're without some key players, Godin, Jimenez, Arojo at the back, three top center backs. Cavani's not in the team as well. And I feel like this Uruguay team are still kind of figuring out what they're all about. They play in a number of different ways. Some very talented players in this team that Canada are going to have a real test against. Nunez up top, Valverde, Bentancur. Like, there's some really good players in this team, and it's a team that is better than anyone that Canada has faced over the last, I'll say, 12 years, since 2010, and they played Argentina. That's how good this Uruguay team can be. So I'm excited about that, and I think that we will have some more questions answered about this Canadian men's national team. The 2-0 win against Qatar, I think it's suitable. It was appropriate that they played them first, have those feel-good vibes leading into what there will be much difficult games, not just against Uruguay, not just against Japan, but all three competitors at the World Cup are going to provide a more difficult test. So I think establishing some good vibes after a tumultuous June in camp, I think it was needed. It was required. The smiles on the faces came back. They played with a level of confidence, the group becoming much more familiar with one another. But in terms of questions being answered, I think that Samuel Piette can do a job in this team. I think that we know how dangerous the front three for this team will be. I think that we're learning by the game just how good this back three of Canada can be in terms of Johnston, Vittoria, and Miller as well. But go ahead and test yourself in a game where there will be difficult moments. There will be difficult times. You're going to have to go up against it. So I think that we'll learn much more against Uruguay than we will be against Qatar, or than the experience against Qatar. But it was setting the table for something much more substantial to come. And that's kind of how I look at that opening game.
Charlie, how do you want to follow that up?
Yeah, I think that's pretty much where I'm at as well. I think Qatar were honestly a little bit disappointing to me in just how poor they were. I don't think that was quite the test that even Canada themselves really wanted in that game. A game where you have the ball as much as they did is not really something they're going to do at the World Cup, I think, against the teams they're going to play. But again, I think the best thing about that is just getting the group back together, seeing that they're still clicking. Kyle Larin shows that he can still be clinical even when he's not in, say, the greatest form or getting the most minutes at club level. So I think that's really good to see. And in general, I think just maintaining that positivity around this team is very important. But again, going into this Uruguay game, it's a way, way different test. Uruguay, a team that will be valuing this game very highly as well, right? They just lost to Iran in a friendly, and that was kind of a disappointing one for them, I think. So as Wheels mentioned, this is a very important one for a team find its, maybe have its identity fall into place before the World Cup, because they are a very ambitious team, and it is really the hardest team John Herdman's ever coached against in the men's national team program. So it's going to be an exciting one. Just as the quality of players on that Uruguayan side will make it a very different proposition for Canada, who will have to, dig into a little bit more of the kinds of play and the things that they might experience more often at the World Cup than they would have against Qatar.
Well, it wouldn't be a proper One Soccer Today without hearing from one of, but usually both, Andy Petrillo and Oliver Platt. Sure, they are gallivanting throughout Europe, posing in front of palaces and castles on the cobblestones, but they are also doing a fair bit of work here and there. Here is some of it as they check in from Bratislava.
Hey guys, yes, we are in Bratislava, Slovakia. Now, a bit of a rainy day. It was rainy at training session yesterday. They're calling for rain on match day as well, but fingers crossed, all will be good and the sun will come out and peek its way into that Canada versus Uruguay match. But Ollie, let's first talk about one player in particular. How do we not talk about Alphonso Davies? This is a guy we've seen go up against really tough competition over in Europe with Bayern Munich. He's a league champion, he's a Champions League champion, but he's done so as left back with Bayern. So what are we realistically expecting from him as he plays a more offensive role against Uruguay for Canada?
I actually think games like these might suit Alphonso Davies, the forwards, more than games like the Qatar game do. I think you could see in that game, Qatar defended very deep. They congested space a lot in their own half. That makes it difficult, I think, for Davies at times to stretch his legs, to get going in terms of that pace and speed he has, and is his most dangerous weapon. I think against a team like Uruguay, you're going to see them higher up the field. You're going to see them try and get in Canada's faces, disrupt Canada much more. And that allows Davies, I think, to create a bit more space on the counter-attack in a way that might actually suit him. So I'm really intrigued to see him in this game. We've talked about how we haven't seen him a whole lot for Canada over the past 12 months or so. We certainly haven't seen him against this level of opposition. And this, I think, is the best preview we're going to get, along with that Japan game just before the tournament, of what Alphonso Davies might look like against a Belgium or a Croatia, and how Canada can get success against those teams.
Worth noting, he's healthy, right? He did get subbed out in that 58th minute against Qatar after going down. He had gone down a couple times, but he remained on the bench. We knew after the game, John Herdman had said he was good. He trained yesterday. He's looking fantastic. Also training a bit is Tajon Buchanan, and we do expect him to get some minutes in. John Herdman had said just that. They have an agreement with Club Brugge, but here's the thing, and I know it's a small sample size, but Junior Hoylett winning in that right wing back role looked great. John Herdman's been singing his praises. Dare I ask if that could be a long-term position for Junior on the team?
Yeah, it could be, I think. We'll see, again, when you talk about opponents, the caliber of the ones that Canada are going to face at the World Cup, you ask questions about, is Junior ready for that defensively? Because it is a new position for him, and he's been a winger, an attacking player for his whole career. But certainly, like you said, John Herdman's been really enthusiastic about the way he's performing in that position, not just for Canada in this camp, but for his club as well. That was what drove the change, was playing there for Reading in the Championship in England. So it's an interesting one. I think Hoylett could be an option there. I think also on the left side, Liam Miller could become an option there in a similar kind of way. So then you start to ask the question, with Richie Larea, Sam Adekubi also factoring in those positions, does that allow you to play Tajon Buchanan further forwards? And then how do you fit him in with Larin and David and Davies and so on? But if we've heard John Herdman say that he wants to get Alphonso Davies as close to goal as possible. The same logic would seemingly apply to Tajon Buchanan. So maybe we could see him a bit further forward if Hoylett does become more of an option at wingback.
Options are good. You just got to get the right option, and that's why John Herdman is the head coach, and we just sit here and talk about it. So let's look a little bit ahead to Uruguay, and we know the firepower that they have. They just had a 7-game unbeaten streak come to an end, 1-0 against Iran on Friday, as Canada was beating Qatar 2-0. But I'm more curious to get your opinion on facing an opposition like that. Who do you think has the opportunity to really shine for Canada?
Well, you look at the back line, obviously, and, I think that's what everyone's going to be watching, is how do Alistair Johnston, Steven Vittoria, Kamal Miller, and so on, how do they fare against Luis Suarez and Darwin Núñez, and, the quality in midfield as well that Uruguay has. So Uruguay, I think, are a team trying to figure a few things out right now. They only appointed a new coach at the end of last year. They're still, they don't have Edison Cavani in this camp, but they're figuring out how do they fit him in the team with Suarez and Núñez, all kind of out-and-out number 9s. So there's tactically a few interesting things there, but I think just in terms of the quality of the players, this is going to be a massive test when you look at, even at this stage of his career where he's a little bit older now, just kind of the streetwiseness of someone like Luis Suarez, his ability to find little moments and space in the box. Canada's going to have to be switched on at every single moment, but one thing we can say about this Canadian team throughout qualification, and I think going into this game as well, they don't fear anything. Alistair Johnston came out and spoke to the media yesterday and said it was a bit of a bummer that Cavani's not here, because he wanted to test himself against all three and not just 2 world-class strikers. So they're looking forward to it, and it'll be good to see them against this level of competition.
Yeah, yesterday at training, the back line was really talking about how they're just expected to fail against teams like this. So they're looking to prove them wrong. Definitely looking forward to Canada versus Uruguay Tuesday here in Bratislava. Gentlemen?
Andy, thank you. I'm going to say I have 3 takeaways from that. 1, confident, bordering on arrogant Alistair Johnston is the constant vibe that I aspire to in my day-to-day life. Two, Oliver Platt looks fantastic with the hoodie blazer combo. And three,
He got
Petrillo was
that from
just in
you.
Austria. He did, didn't he? Petrillo saying the sun will come out tomorrow and not burst out into a musical number was my only real disappointment from that entire feature. But we appreciate it, Andy and Ollie. Charlie, I'm going to come right
Close.
back to you talking more about Uruguay here. Let's
Mhm.
ask about expectations. What does Canada need to do? What do you need to see for you to consider the match a success? Is it frankly win? Is it play well and play to the identity that they're trying to be and just put in a good performance? Where are you on this?
Yeah, I think it's more on the performance than the result. Obviously, it's as we said, it's a very tough proposition to expect Canada to win or get a result against a team as good as Uruguay. But I think there are things in the way that they play that you're going to be looking for. You want to see, for one thing, Canada how they stack up in midfield, because that Uruguayan midfield with Valverde and Bentancur and the other players they have there. You want to see how Canada fares there, especially Stefan Eustáquio, who will definitely be starting in midfield for Canada at the World Cup. Um, whoever he plays next to tomorrow, might not necessarily be, but Eustáquio will be for sure. So that's an area of the pitch you want to see. And then the other part, you just want to see them maybe be a little bit more clinical in attack. You had a few maybe wasted chances against Qatar, but against a team like Uruguay, a team that defends sound, a team that's that quality, right? So when you at the World Cup again, the game's not going to go your way. So you want to see, that.
Okay, we have the Charlie O'Connor Clark dial-up internet problems, but we're going to power through this. Wheels, if you want to tack onto this.
Well, oh,
I think he said something about Ike Ugbo in there, but I couldn't quite piece it together.
I don't even remember.
there's there's a couple things that I'm looking for, because I think there's a lot of, we think Canada is blank when it comes to this team. Yeah, you want to prove that you can hang with the big boys, but there's a couple things. One, building off, and I did hear Charlie mention the attack, finishing chances. We think that no matter who this Canada team plays, that David, Laren are going to be dangerous, whether it be in transition or otherwise. Go and prove it against a very good defensive team. I mentioned they're missing some of their top center backs, but their structure, their versatility, their strength in numbers, this is still a very well organized group. So I want to make sure that those three players can in fact do damage against the top defensive side, like Uruguay. I think that on top of that, how do you handle a Darwin Nunez? Like, with all due respect to a Christian Pulisic, like when you're going up against a Nunez or a Lukaku at the World Cup or players like this, it's a much bigger task. It's much more difficult. So how do they decide to mark a player like that? Whether it's strength in numbers, whether it's one individual player, I want to see how those individual matchups play out. And three, sorry, this Canadian side has called itself fearless. They fear nothing. They fear no one. Well, let's see it when they stare, a beast like Uruguay in the eye and go through some difficult moments. If they go down a couple goals in that game, I'm not sure they will, but if they do, what do you make of this group? Because they have kind of lived in a world where things have been comfortable for them. When they've gone up a goal, they just haven't relinquished leads for the past 3 or 4 years. Like, this group has been that good in terms of when the moment has been going right. What if it doesn't go right? Because the prospects at the World Cup, like, things, will go against them, and how they respond is going to be massive. So a little bit of adversity in how they react to it. I want to kind of see how they react to it. So are they really going to be fearless in these moments? So I think we'll learn a whole lot more this upcoming game.
Lastly, on Les Rouges, I know these camps are meant in a perfect world to give you as close to a like for like chance to see how you line up against who you will be facing in the World Cup, especially these lead up windows. There's only 2 matches remaining for Canada before they are on the world's biggest stage. And I know, Gareth, it's impossible to say Uruguay is precisely like this, but out of the 3 nations that Canada will see in the group stage, who do you think La Celeste resembles the most out of Belgium, Morocco, and Croatia?
Well, it depends who they play, but I kind of lean to more like Croatia in terms of the way they play. I know that they have been experimenting, been playing a little bit more with 3 at the back, 5 at the back, but typically at their best, they've a very powerful 3-man midfield. So, like you'll see in
Mm.
Croatia, a team, by the way, who for me, every time I see them is getting better and better. I
Yeah, they're
feel like they had a
terrifying.
little bit of a dip a year ago, but now they've really hit their stride. Brozovic, Kovacic, Modric. I mean, when you have, Vecino, Bentancur, Valverde, Torreira, if you want to put in a kind of more disruptor in the midfield, that's a very good midfield three. And I think that that's when you see Uruguay at your best. But there's a little bit of a hint of Belgium. Like Darwin Nunez is a big man. Like he is a handful. So is Romelu Lukaku, right? Like, so there's a little bit of a similarity in profile of player. But if you're going to look at team, it's probably a little bit more like Croatia than anyone else they'll play.
Charlie?
Yeah, that's pretty much exactly what I was going to say. I think there's elements of kind of both challenges that Canada will face. The midfield is obviously the most important one, and I think that's, again, for me, one of the biggest questions around how Canada cope with that against really top midfields in this world. That midfield three, Valverde is just an unbelievable quality player in that midfield. I think that this Uruguayan team has a little more quality up top than Croatia, as Gareth mentioned, so that's a good test as well. So different parts of the pitch, I think, for this Canada team will be tested by similar sorts of situations that you're going to see at that World Cup. But again, it's just on that midfield for me. That is a very, very tough ask for some of these players, and just seeing how, just hoping that you don't get, run through in the middle of the pitch or straight up the middle, allowing attacks into your back three or anything like that. That would, for me, would be kind of a good sign that this Canada team is well prepared for those kinds of challenges.
Yeah, I trust the Canada structure. Like you saw them try to play with 3 at the back. Typically during World Cup qualifying, Charlie, we saw them play a
Yeah.
4-4-2. They kind of more played this 3-4-3 against Qatar, but it's tough to kind of gauge what that might actually look like because the fullbacks, even like Kamal Miller and Alistair Johnson, were pushing way forward. What
Yeah.
if you're hemmed back a little bit more? What is that structure? Can it stay true to form? And again, even more so than the midfield, because I feel like the structure with John Herdman at the helm is going to be okay. Those attacking players, how do they take advantage with any perceived weakness in the Uruguay back line? They're going to, they have a pace advantage against Belgium. Perhaps they can take advantage of the flanks a little bit more on Croatia. Where can they pinpoint in this Uruguay side to be a little bit more precise in terms of the way that they're going to attack in what we believe will be limited chances? These little things, these little margins are what are going to separate this side from being successful or not. And most importantly, Adam, in deeming this game a success, everyone coming out of it healthy. Like
Yes,
we're going to see Tajon Buchanan coming on the field. I don't need a heart attack with Davies going down anymore. Please and thank you.
Yeah.
Like that is paramount. Everyone healthy, Tajon getting minutes, all these things being good things for Canada.
I love an underdog story, and so you mentioned Darwin Nunez. I think about big man. That's not me. I love the underdogs. I love the little guy. I'm also excited to see if we do see some first caps tomorrow late in the game. Can you imagine Joel Waterman goes in, strolls in? There you go. There's Luis Suarez. Anyways, there's a lot to be excited about. We hope you're looking forward to it as much as we are. Just one more Sleep Canada, a reminder of the timings of what we are going to see tomorrow. It's going to be an exciting game. We have a full 1 hour match day live, noon Eastern time. Le Rouge, La Celeste. Set your calendars, your time zones accordingly. I can do the easy 2 hour minus. That is 10 a.m. Mountain Time, 9 a.m. Pacific. You follow the rest. We're looking forward to it.